Hi there, this is Big V here, and it's Friday night. We're going to go to the Mark Hamilton Family and You call. So here's what I'm going to tell you all. This week, um, um, this week, I am doing the Friday Night Essence, Finding Your Friday Night Essence workshop on social media. I don't do it on YouTube, but on social media, people get to experience the workshop of the Friday Night Essence, finding the person they were meant to be. That will happen this upcoming week at some point. It was scheduled for Wednesday, but I'm aiming for probably Tuesday evening on social media. It will be done live, and yours truly will be hosting it. I will. Anyways, we're going to go to the Mark Hamilton Family and You call. And by the way, for everyone that needs to know, right now the society is on hold on stuff, from my understanding, unless there's been a new update as of tonight. The society is on hold because of Steve Fagan's death. Steve Fagan was a mentor. Um, he kept it interesting. Steve Fagan actually kept the mentor calls that he was in charge of very interesting, and he always kept it fast heart rate at a fast heart rate. He kept it alive. He did his best at keeping the Neil Think Society alive, and he was trying to get things going. Really, I sure miss Steve Fagan. And by the way, I want to tell you something. Steve Fagan hasn't been gone that long yet, but boy, I can sure tell um, the difference with the mentor calls now. Without Steve Fagan being around, I sure can tell a big difference. For right now, it's okay, but down the line, if we don't get some good mentoring going on some of these calls that are going on right now, um, puts a red check mark in my head, and I'm not too positive about um, any of their other calls that they might be considering and doing. Anyways, we're going to go to the phone right now, dial in the number, and see what was said tonight. I sure miss Steve Fagan, by the way, just to let you know. It's a bothersome to knowing that he's gone, and boy, I start to feel the difference with the mentor calls. Like Thursday night, within just 2 to 3 weeks of Steve Fagan being gone, I notice Thursday night is definitely not the same. Pie after tonight, Friday night won't be definitely not be the same. And after Tuesday next week, after the Tuesday night call, that's definitely probably not going to be the same either. So one of these calls I'm probably going to cut out, but I'm not positive. I'm going to wait until I hear the new calls that are supposed to be coming out at some point. But right now, they have to reconstruct because Steve Fagan's no longer with the society. By the way, if you guys want to know what book I'm reading right now, I am reading the Visions book right now. The 12 Visions, I'm on Vision 12. And I've been reading some other material, Neo Cheating, Neo Tech, Neo Think, Mark Hamilton, Family and You, and then The Prime Cure I am actually reading as well. So just wanting to put that out there. By the way, I do a program on social media every week, so some of this material gets exposed to the general public. The 12 Visions Party, I actually do talk about that on my own terms, and we'll see what happens with the 12 Visions Party down the line with the society. I'm not, I don't have a great expectation with it, but we'll see what happens. All right, we're going to go to the phone now and dial in the number. and join into the call here. Hold on just a second here.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound key. Please wait. Please enter the reference number followed by the pound key. Enter the pound key to enter the. Please wait while we prepare your.
Here we go. Enjoy, guys.
Press 6 to fast forward for 1 minute. Press 4 to rewind for 1 minute. Press 5 to pause or resume. Hi, Patty. Hi.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charlie Moore. This is Mark Hamilton and Family and You call on this 11th day of January. The year's flying by already. Just have a couple things to cover before we actually start the call. We are going to be talking about the bicameral mind tonight and some examples of it. But first of all, let me cover about the reach out. I will be talking about this for a while. We're starting a new reach out list because there's just a lot of people on the older list that just are not calling and not using it, and it's kind of wasting people's time. So I am starting a new list. I got probably 40 or 50 names so far, but we need more, obviously, because we had over 500 on the last one. So if you haven't been on the list before, it's time to get on it. All I need is your name, your email address, and your phone number, and the state that you're in, and you can email me. And email is C More Options. C, the letter C, as in Charlie, More, M-O-O-R-E, and Options, O-P-T-I-O-N-S, 68. So it's C More Options 68 at gmail.com. So just send me an email. Send me an email, and I will get you on the list. I hope sometime next week to get the first one out. But I'm also going to be using it for other things besides just for us to contact each other. If people who have not been on it, it's very important for us to make connections with each other. And that's what this reach out list was started for. And it really does help you to move forward by just talking to other members, because maybe they might have an answer for you, or you might have an answer for them about something. So that's why it was started. But again, if you want to get a hold of me to change or to get onto this list for the first time, or to get on it from the old list, again, see more options 68 at gmail.com. And then on this Sunday night's call, for the Prime Cure call, I will have a special announcement on Sunday. We're still getting the final details together, but on Sunday night, so if you can make the call Sunday night at 9 o'clock, get on the call, because this is the first time that this will be announced, and it is a major announcement, and I'm very excited about it. So that'll be Sunday night at 9 o'clock. So hopefully you all will be there, because it's a good thing. And then for the recording tonight, each call is recorded, and if you want to go back and listen to the recording, you have to dial 515. Obviously, it is crazy out there. Things are going more weird every day, but this is all of the results of a bicameral mind, including ours sometimes. But we have to start somewhere, and it all has to start with us. My computer's not cooperating here so far, so hold on for just a minute. All right, here we go. I'm going to read just a couple articles that I've read over the last week or so. And I think it's important that this is happening today, and a lot of it you might not actually believe, but it is happening. This is what the government's doing to us, and it's all because the people who are running the governments and and us too, a lot of people are still in that reaction mode. Of course, they're still in that bicameral mind. There's a law that a lot of people don't know about. It's called the Civil Asset Forfeiture. It is a legal process that allows the government to seize assets and cash from citizens without any due process. Yeah. You don't even have to be charged with a crime. You are assumed guilty unless you can somehow prove your innocence. But of course, not everyone has this ability. If you aren't local, state, or federal law enforcement, this is called stealing, and you can go to prison. So the government can steal from us, all right, legally. We all know that they steal from us on our taxes, but everything else that goes with it is absolutely crazy. But the government is actually a bigger problem than common thieves. A 2015 report showed that law enforcement used civil asset forfeiture to steal more from the U.S. citizens than every thief, robber, and burglar in America combined. About $4.5 billion worth of cash, cars, homes, and other property is taken by civil asset forfeiture each year. Hundreds of millions more than common criminals steal. So understand this for a second. Let that sink in for a second. The government is legally stealing from us more than all of the robbers and the thieves out there in a year combined. $4.5 billion worth. And it happens at every level. Your local cop can use this law just like your state trooper, and then any one of the armed agents of the U.S. government, from the FBI to the Fish and Wildlife Service, can rob you for whatever reason they want. And this travesty continues to grow because the cops who take your stuff get to keep it. The police departments and government agencies around the country depend on civil asset forfeiture to boost their budgets. Cops will literally keep some of the cars that they take as squad cars, and then they'll make a fortune auctioning off the houses, the boats, and everything else that they confiscate. Imagine this. This is America. This is not supposed to happen this way. Obviously, this gives cops an incentive to steal whether or not they actually think the property was used in a crime or acquired illegally. Remember, civil asset forfeiture adds billions every year to their bottom line. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court heard arguments in case of civil asset forfeiture. Tyson Timbs was convicted of selling a small amount of drugs to an undercover police officer, and he was sentenced to house arrest, and he paid a fine of $1,200. But then police used civil asset forfeiture to take his $42,000 Land Rover, which Timbs purchased with money from a life insurance policy after his father died. The money did not come from selling drugs or any other illegal activity. Timbs sued, and the case made its way to the Supreme Court because every lower court in Indiana said that this law was perfectly legit. The case revolves around whether or not the seizure of the Land Rover was an excessive fine under the Eighth Amendment, and whether or not this protection against excessive fines applies to state governments. And the public got some crazy insight into the government's position. The Indiana Solicitor General was arguing in favor of this law when Justice Steve Breyer asked him a hypothetical. Breyer asked, if a state needs revenue, could it force someone to forfeit their Mercedes or their Ferrari for speeding, even if they were just going 5 miles over the speed limit? And the utterly appalling answer from the Indiana Solicitor General said, yes. That's right. The official government position is that they can steal any amount of your property in connection with any crime whatsoever, no matter how trivial the crime may be, even exceeding the speed limit by 5 miles an hour. This is how overbearing an authorization of the government has become in the land of the free. This is how much power your local cops have, and the power only grows as you go to state and federal offices. If there is any solace in any of this, is that the other Supreme Court justices were reportedly laughing at this exchange. The justices seemed that Indiana's top lawyer was using such absurd assertions and flimsy reckoning in his arguments. So for now, we can keep our cars if we pull out over for speeding, but that may not always be the case. Depending on how this is ruled, it could pave the way for even more crazy abuses of power, or it could curb the practice and rein in those thieves in uniforms. But just understand where the government is coming from. These politicians and bureaucrats and officers think that they can do whatever they want. Absolutely anything goes with no limitation whatsoever. And it makes it a little tough to feel like you are really living in the land of the free. All right, so that's one thing that's going on out there that nobody likes. But honestly, I read about this about 2 years ago, and that was the first time I ever heard about this law, and now I'm hearing about it again. It's absolutely insane what's happening to people like you and me. The next one I have here is What a Bunch of Idiots, this one's called. A few days ago, the creator of the most famous consumer credit score in the U.S. announced a major overhaul in how it rates borrowers. Consumers live and die by the FICO score. And a high FICO score means that it's easy to obtain loans at a lower interest rate. And a bad score, in theory, means that you have a history of not paying your debts, hence making it difficult to obtain loans. Well, it turns out there are tens of millions of people in the U.S. who either don't have a FICO score at all, for example, no credit history, or they just have bad credit. So FICO decided that they would reinvent the way that calculates the scores, giving a big boost to people with bad credit. Virtually overnight, people who had a history of not paying their bills will immediately be deemed creditworthy. And poof, they have access to more debt than ever before. No offense, but what a bunch of idiots. This company is deliberately lowering its standards and pretending that people with a terrible credit history are actually top quality borrowers. Gee, where have we seen this before? Oh, that's right, just before the massive financial crisis 10 years ago. It's genius. It wasn't even that long ago, during the housing boom in the early 2000s, that banks were doing exactly the same thing, deliberately lowering their lending standards and providing loans with no money down to borrowers with bad credit. Everyone was in on it. The big rating agencies like S&P and Moody's all played along. Even the federal government gave its seal of approval to this ridiculous charade. But eventually the bubble burst, interest rates started rising, and the borrowers could no longer pay. Housing prices tanked, banks lost billions, the stock market plummeted, the economy went into a tailspin. It unraveled so quickly, and it all started with a system that churned out far too much debt, far too easy to borrowers who had no hope of paying it back. And that's precisely what we're seeing now. It starts at the top. The U.S. government is sitting on a record $21.7 trillion in debt. That's several trillion dollars more than the size of the entire U.S. economy. So our economy, which is the second biggest in the world, only behind China, we are in more debt than our economy produces each year. That's an unbelievable amount of money. Each year, the government borrows around $1 trillion, and the Treasury Department expects to sustain this grim deficits for the foreseeable future. State and local governments are not in similar positions. In debt up to their eyeballs and drowning in unfunded pension obligations. And each year it gets worse. The government's own projections show the debt only increasing. They have no chance of paying it off. Even in the private sector, most corporations are much better off. Not including banks, companies in the U.S. have around $7 trillion in total debt. Go figure, that's the highest amount on record ever. More than 40% of all the corporate debt is rated just one notch above junk status. And a full 14% of companies in the S&P 500 don't even generate enough revenue to make interest payments. Then there's the consumer, supposedly the rock-solid pillar that drives the U.S. economy. Consumer debt is on pace to reach a record $4 trillion this year. Credit card debt is at an all-time high. Auto loans are at an all-time high. Student debt is at an all-time high. And the average American has little chance of repaying this debt. According to a recent study published by the Federal Reserve, 40% of adults don't have enough money to cover a $400 emergency expense, like a medical bill or a flat tire. And 21% of Americans have zero savings. Neither government nor business nor the consumer has any chance of paying down these debts. And yet the money keeps flowing. So companies like FICO are even lowering their standards to give more debt to consumers who are already too heavily indebted. And investors across global financial markets claim to buy bonds of companies and governments that routinely burn through billions of dollars in cash. It's pretty extraordinary how history repeats itself. The financial system creates gigantic problems caused by too much debt, then tries to solve that problem with more debt. The house of cards eventually will collapse. People will lick their wounds for a few years and the whole cycle will begin anew. If you're looking, we can go through that. And so the economy is moving on a straight line for the last 10 years. We're getting more debt, more debt, more debt. Nobody seems to have an answer for it, but yet they just keep on printing money. And it's really going to be pretty obvious to us that, and foolish to think that this will be a rainbow and buttercups forever. This time it will be no different than the last time. It's going to be a mess when it hits, and it's going to hit again soon. There's just no doubt about it. This is what's going on. And then there's one more, and then I'm going to start talking about the bicameral mind. And this one's about the corruption in the pension funds. Last week, the head of the New York State Pension Fund found herself a new job. Vicki Fuller, the former head of New York's $209 billion fund, now earns $275,000 per year working part-time for a national gas group called the Williams Companies. Good work if you can get it. It's noteworthy that when Miss Fuller ran her state pension fund, she invested $110 million of taxpayers' money to buy bonds issued by none other than the Williams Companies. So bear in mind that Moody's, the credit rating agency, downgraded Williams' financial outlook to negative because of the company's high leverage and risk. The fund that Ms. Fuller managed also voted in favor of huge multi-million-dollar pay packages for senior executives of the Williams corporations, even though the stock price was dropping. So, maybe it's just a little crazy coincidence that Mrs. Fuller left her job as a state pension fund and took an extremely lucrative part-time job the same week with the Williams Companies. This is so blatant. It's Banana Republic stuff. It's not as bad as the billion-dollar fee from Malaysia's pension fund, but it's in the same stink. Bear in mind that most pension funds are already in terrible conditions to begin with, even before you factor in potential corruption by the bureaucrats who manage them. Overall, public pension funds in the U.S. are short $7 trillion on which they have promised to pay out to retirees. So if you have a pension plan, doesn't matter if it's state, federal, or whatever, all those pension plans are out there right now are $7 trillion short. That's absolutely incredible. If you include Social Security, that amount balloons beyond $50 trillion. And that's just the U.S. The World Economic Forum says that the total global pension shortfall was $70 trillion in 2015, and they expect it to reach $400 trillion by 2050, which is only 30 years away. So pension funds across nearly every major economy on this planet are seriously in the red. It's really a question of how severe the problem is and how much longer can they kick the can down the road. Japan, for example, borrows billions each year to prop up its pension fund, and it goes deeper and deeper into debt to do that. Some countries have started to make major pension reforms. Russia is one noble example. Putin recently raised the retirement age, a move which proved highly unpopular. And that's precisely the point. Pension benefits are looming, are long-term promises that people have spent decades dreaming about. And a lot of its people is really, and it is their only hope. They work terrible jobs that they hate for bosses that they work terrible jobs that they have hated for bosses that despise, earning pitiful salaries for decades, and for the dream that one day they'd be able to retire on the pension that the government promised them. When politicians make any adverse changes to that promise, people become unglued. And yet the arithmetic is completely obvious. A lot of major pension funds pay out more in benefits than they generate in tax revenue and investment income. They simply are not sustainable. Eventually, the funds will run out of money. In the U.S., the Social Security Administration has gone so far as to indicate the year in which its gigantic trust funds will run out of money. That's precisely giving you a date to circle on your calendar, and it's only about 15 years away. And of course, it doesn't help when government people who control public pension funds receive tremendous personal benefit for steering taxpayers' money towards bad investments. The system is obviously flawed, but there are solutions. When you might not be able to rely on your pension or Social Security in the future, there's nothing stopping you from setting aside money for your own retirement. And there's absolutely zero downside in doing this. No one is going to be worse off for having extra money for retirement. And obviously that could be like the 401ks and the IRAs. Both of these can be established under a self-directed or solo structure. But then again, many people are afraid of investing on their own because nobody ever really taught us how to invest money or how to make money or how to sell or invest it or whatever. People are very afraid of that. Let me see. And I know that, in fact, I was just reading this, I think it was last week or the week before, Illinois, which is the highest state in debt. I forget, there was 40-some billion dollars or some outrageous amount in debt. And the city of Chicago is right now for the city employees' pension funds, they only can cover 26% of it. 26%, that's all. That's basically for every dollar invested in there, they can only cover 26 cents of that. So what the city is doing is that they're borrowing all this money, which is putting them more in debt, just to bring that fund up to 50%. But then it's only going to go back down under after that. So they're just kicking that can down the road again just to keep Chicago somewhat afloat. But it's not really afloat. This is all happening out there, and it's been happening for years and years and years because man is a bicameral animal. I understand that. We cannot survive reacting to everything that goes on. It's just this. It's always just this constant reaction, and it's a reaction that we have to stop doing. So how do we? Well, first we've got to understand the bicameral mind itself. And that's the point I'm going to cover right now. If I can ever get this computer to start doing something here. There we go. All right. Now, let's start talking about this bicameral. So right now the world, it is in crisis. The world is standing at a crossroad, and it can go either way. But each of us on this call tonight are in the same situation. How we decide which way to go is more important than which way the world decides which way to go. You understand that? It's more important for us to decide which way that we're going to go than which way the world is going to go. But why is that? Well, it's one simple reason. It's the bicameral mind. The world has no idea about this bicameral mind. They don't even know what it does to them every day. And they don't know they don't know that it is a reaction mode. This world doesn't realize that we react to almost everything. And these reactions cause what the world is today. Over 85% of the people in prison are there because of a reaction and not a response. We are where we are in life because of reactions and not of responses. We have to stop reacting, and we have to start to respond. When we react to something, we're in a primitive mode, a mind of survival, a defensive mind, a mind open to outer stimulations and voices, and nothing to do with our inner authority. That place where our soul, our I-ness, our being is. The place where we can reflect on our lives, our path in life, our peace, and our love. Without this place, we are nothing more than animals just surviving to stay alive. Is this how we are supposed to live? But I guess that's really up to us. Decisions possibly could be the main reason why this world is such a mess. The hardest thing to do while in the bicameral mind is making a decision. It causes more stress on us than anything else. So understand that. When we have a hard time making a decision, and if we're doing that in a bicameral mind, we don't want to make that decision. So we'll stress out, and we'll stress out, and we'll stress out over it. So what happens then? Because we have such a hard time making these decisions, we let other people make them for us. And look where we are today because of that. Look how much of an advantage the government took over us by saying, we'll make these decisions for you. We have the best interests at heart for you. So just let us take care of that. And they take care of this, and they take care of that. Now there's nothing in this world that you can do without government approval. And if anyone can name something that you can do in this country today without the government interference, please tell me, because I don't know. I can't figure out anywhere that we can do something without the government doing it. So we will roll the dice, we'll do paper, rock, and scissors, we'll draw straws, we'll do anything not to make a decision. So as we let other people make them for us, we give out our power every day, and today we walk around like a bunch of zombies because we can't make a decision, and now we lose more of ourselves every day. And we're losing our souls, we're losing our interest, we're losing our love, we're losing our passion, we're losing everything. Because we're not taking charge of our own life. We're letting other people take it for us. And we just take it. We just accept it. Well, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. It's just the way it is. Well, we have to stop reacting like that and start to respond to it. Power is another reason why we are where we are. Instead of using the power within to become better people and to make this world a better place, we use the power over other people. And that's the biggest difference between neothink and, say, government. Government wants the power so that they can use it over us. We want our power back so we have our power. So we can live the life that we want to live. This power affects our ego, which affects our reasoning, and we lose ourselves with this power over other people. That's what happens to everybody who has power out there. But when Marx said that reason is dead, this is what it is based on. Look at the crazy things that government does to us and try to find reasons in the following things. The government poisons our food. They force dangerous drugs on us. They pollute our air. They keep people poor. They don't educate our kids. They start all the wars. They take all our money. They keeping cures from us. And on top of all this, we pay them money to do this to us. Now, if that's not insanity, I don't know what is. We pay for them to kill us. Every one of us does. We pay them to kill us. Let that sink in. This is what kind of power it does to a bicameral mind. No reasoning skills. Okay? Here is a perfect example of this. Joe Biden's son died a few years ago, remember? And he died of cancer. And people think it was because there was no cure for cancer. I am sure that Joe Biden knows that there are cures out there. But with no reasoning, the elite will let their own family members die and give up their power. I honestly believe that. I'm not saying that Biden's son might have lived. I think if he took other treatment, he would have lived at least longer, I believe. And maybe a lot longer. But to pour chemo into this man, it's just a waste of time. But yet Biden knows it. He has to know that there's cures out there, but they can't do that. Because then if they can do it for Biden's son, then why can't they do it for your son? And then that's where the problem starts. But I want to mention here something that is not mentioned much when you're talking about bicameral minds. And that one word is compassion. When we're in a bicameral mind, where does our passion go? When we're in a bicameral mind, we are selfless. There is no room for compassion. When we're in a bicameral mind, we are humanoids. The elite, their ruling class are humanoids, like a robot, no compassion. And I really want to talk about this for a second. We always feel bad for, like, when people are hurt in an earthquake or tornado, and we feel bad for them, and we send millions of dollars. Man, this country can generate millions, almost all, overnight for everything. But if you take away what people do there, and they have that compassion for the people who lost everything, but in our daily lives, what's happening to our passion every day? Aren't we out there just to get our money? Aren't we out there, and and we will push aside somebody to get ahead, or we'll say something bad about somebody to get ahead, or we'll start gossiping about somebody when there's no basis for it. Look at all the times that we don't have our passion, and we forget about our passion when we're in that bicameral mind. I wanted that promotion, not Joe. I wanted to get that promotion, and I really tried to get him out of here. How many times have we done that? Or how many times you talk about somebody else? Or how many times you judge people? Just think about that for a second. How many times do we judge people? I mean, first of all, we automatically judge people when we see a person for the first time, just by their physical look. Well, that person's really, really skinny. Well, that person's really, really heavy. Well, this person is this and that person is that. We haven't even spoken to this person yet, and we're judging them already. And it's one of the hardest things to stop, is to judge people, because that's all we have to go on in the beginning is how they look. But it's instead of standing there saying, there's a person just like me. There's a person standing there. Doesn't matter if they're black, white, yellow, pink. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. It doesn't matter if they're skinny or fat. It doesn't matter. It's a person. Where's our compassion to keep our mind open until we meet this person, instead of just judging this person based on how they look? That's in the bicameral mind. That's where it takes our passion away. That's where it takes our I-ness away. That's where it takes pieces of our soul out. Is when we just judge people, because we are reacting instead of responding. These are the things we have to work on for us to get better, for us to be, Ross said that there is no reason left out there, and he's absolutely correct. There's no logic whatsoever left in this world, anywhere, in any country. Nothing makes sense, and I mean nothing. Find me one thing in this bicameral mind mode and in this anti-civilization mode that makes sense. Everything is done from the outside. The way that we live is all controlled by the outside. The way that we think is all controlled by the outside. The way we spend our money, the way we act, the way we talk, we follow the latest fashions, we follow the movie stars, we follow the movies, we follow this, we follow our favorite sports people. We all live our lives based on these people, because we aren't happy with our life. We've got to start taking our power back. We've got to start taking our power back. We have to start looking inside, not outside. We must stop this bicameral thinking. We must start thinking for ourselves, because once you start getting that power, you start getting that compassion back, and you start feeling good about yourself, and you start making, and then because when you're in a respond mode, all right, instead of reacting, let's just take a breath. When you feel yourself starting to react, and you say, you got to start practicing something to stop the actual reaction. I use a stop sign. I think Steve used to use a red light. And when I catch myself, because I can get angry, and I can get angry very fast sometimes. So when I feel that anger just ready to come out, I try, and most times now I am more successful with this. I just say it about 1,000,000 times, stop, 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 stop. And that's my code for me to take a deep breath and count to 10, seriously. And it might be a fast 10, but it doesn't matter because I'm stopping. And I start to at least calm down a little bit, and I become aware that I'm starting to react. And it doesn't matter if it's something over some silly thing or if it's something major. If we can stop ourselves from reacting and start to respond to it, it really does help. And then in time, that becomes a habit. So now we are not reacting anymore. We are responding. That's what we have to practice on. So there is, it's basically, we have talked about not having compassion. There is just no, because there's no room in our minds and our hearts for this compassion. It's basically, at this point, we have to turn this around, and we need a starting point. And I really think that starting point is compassion. First for yourself, and then for others. And understand your mind. Understand the bicameral mind. Now, just how it works, but the effects it has on you and other people. So you got to start looking at yourself first, like everything else with me, I think. It always starts within us. But you really, really, really have to improve on this. You really have to work at it. It's not easy, because we've been in this bicameral mind our whole life. They jam it down our throats from day one, and then they keep putting it on us, and they keep putting it on us. And it's just a constant burden on us all the time. And I just want to cover a few more things about the bicameral mind here, because I know I haven't talked about it in a while. And really it is the basis. It's early on we were told about Julian Jaynes, who authored the Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. And a lot of Neothic is based on that book. And if you haven't read that book, it's very difficult to read, but it's worth the read, because he really goes into what he calls that bicameral mind and how man did break through to the conscious mind. Eventually, we aren't born with this conscious mind, but we can break through to it. And in the future, that will be the next great evolution, is when we are just born as a conscious person. But that book can be tough to read, but I tell you, it's really worth it. And the man's name is Julian Jaynes, Julian Jaynes, and last name is spelled Jaynes. You can pick up the book off of Amazon. The book is called The Origin of Consciousness, and they break down in the back. If you just put in The Origin of Consciousness, you should find it. I think the book's under $20. Very tough read, but very educational. Me and Steve covered it years ago on the Powers Call, and it was tough to understand, but I got through it. It really did help me understand it more and more. But he did quote he said in one of his quotes in the book, it said in the Word that there is no authorization from outside. Behold, there is nothing there. What we must do must come from ourselves. And that right there just knocked my socks off, because he was saying basically, there's nothing up in the sky. There's not a God up there that's going to change everything for you. Everything comes from within. And then obviously we talk about Jesus Christ in the readings of Neothink, and that there was a Jesus Christ. He did walk on this earth, but he was just a man. He wasn't this almighty God that we made him out to be. And he was speaking in parables because he broke through and he was trying to break through to the other people. It was about 8,000 years ago, 8,000 BC, when man developed language. And that was one of the first steps of man actually becoming more intelligent, but they automatically did react like animals back then. And civilizations were built on the bicameral mentality. But the bicameral, what really went on was the populations were getting bigger as time went on. And as they got bigger, it was more pressure on everybody. And Julian James believes that it was the Jews who were walking through the desert for 40 years, that they were the first people to actually go into the conscious mind. They had to break through to survive. And that's what they did. And that started the conscious mind. And those minds back then are the same minds that we have today. That two-chamber brain. The left side and, the left brain and the right brain. But because of all that pressure on the Jews just running in that desert for 40 years basically just to survive, they knew at one point that they had to break through, and they started to break through, and that's how I would imagine that's how they stayed alive, because they broke through it, and now they could reason. Now they could reason with themselves. Instead of the clan working as a clan, each person could work for themselves. What an advantage that is when you have, say you have a group of 40 people, and they're always reacting to each other at all times. You really can't get anything done because everybody's reacting. No, that way sucks. Let's do it this way. And nobody's sitting down and talking and reasoning. So now if all 40 people just broke through to consciousness and they could reason, now you can have discussions. Now you can have open-ended conversations. Now you can have an open mind. Man can ponder the future then. There was no future with a bicameral mind because they're always reacting all the time. 100% of the time they're just reacting. They aren't sitting down and pondering, And it even shows it in the Bible. When you read the Old Testament, the way it was written in the very beginning, the oldest parts of the Old Testament, it's written in that group mentality. The word I wasn't used. It was we, it was them, it was us. And then at a certain point, you could start seeing the difference. Now it was I. Now people were moving about on their own. And then, at one point, I forget in which book it was in the Old Testament, they talked about a person committing suicide. Only a conscious man can commit suicide. A bicameral person doesn't commit suicide. They don't have the reasoning power. And it was about that time when the Jews started to make progress, and that was when the writings changed. To now, it was more personal, it was more emotions in it, there was more feelings in it, because someone was writing that by themselves. So that's the difference. And 2,000 years later, 2,500 years later, we're still fighting the bicameral mind. If you look at the time this planet has been here, it's just a blink of an eye, 2,500, 3,000 years. But to us, it seems like it's forever. So we're still early on in this bicameral mind, but now, with the writings of Neo thing, it can shorten that of how long we have to stay in this bicameral mind. If we could get this growing, we could knock it out in a decade. If people are aware that they can use both sides of the mind at the same time, that they have a right to have their own power, that they have a right to make their own decisions. Because now they can reason. There's none of that going on out there today. Absolutely none. And that's the problem that we have today. That's a problem we all have. We all have to work on that. We all have to work on not reacting all the time. And then just think about it just today. How many times did you react to something? We all have. I had the news on for 2 seconds today, and I started screaming at the TV already. I said, what am I doing? these morons are morons. I can't change that. I can change myself. But even a year ago, I would have sat here for 20 minutes and cursed at the TV before I would realize I'm reacting. I'm not responding. But I still do it too. We all still do it. But we have to cut that out. And I think it starts really with, obviously, with reading these books and starting to put them into our lives, and to really start to separate from the AC world. That has to happen. We have to start to separate. You can't do it overnight. We can never escape it. But it doesn't mean that we have to participate in it either. Some of you have to go out and work in it every day. We have to go outside. As soon as you walk outside, well, we don't even have to walk outside to do it be in the AC world. It's in our homes. That's when you put the TV on, or the radio on, or you put on the computer, or you go on your iPhone. You're back in that AC world. But we have to start cutting that out. We have to start to separate. It's not easy. But if we don't start to separate, and there's ways that you can do it. Like, I don't go to ball games anymore. I still like sports. I watch them sometimes, but not as much as I used to. But I don't participate in it that much. You know, I watch maybe one football game a week instead of watching 10. Or I watch just a couple minutes of it just to see who won the game. But it doesn't affect my life like it used to. But yet, now, like the NFL having their playoffs now, you know, so like the towns, you know, and as those teams get dwindled down, these people take it more seriously. And you see them all decorated up, and that's fine, but that giving away their power. Their lives are not good. So they have to get their enjoyment out of something else. So people get out of sports, or they get out of gambling, or they get out of drinking, or taking drugs, or smoking, or whatever it's always outside. And they have no idea what's inside of them. We have the advantage here. We know how to look inside. We have all the books here that tells us exactly. Use these books as a tool, and you'll start to realize that we can do this. Instead of, I have to do the escalating program now because Steve's not here anymore. And I've talked to these people, and it's almost the same story almost every day. You know, they have 4, 5, 6, 10 books, and yet, I ask them if they're reading them. Well, yeah, I read a couple, but why are people buying 10 books? They read 2. Again, because they just follow. Well, Mark said I had to buy the books. Well, why are you buying them, though, if you're not going to read them? Does that make sense anywhere? So we have a lot of, this isn't that the people in there are thinking we're all living in a sea of you here. This is still a very AC society because we're all not God men yet. So there's a lot of that anti-civilization living in this society because we have too many people in the bicameral mind just about all day long. Instead of you got to try and stay in that sea of you as much as possible. Like being on this call really is kind of like we are in that civilization of the universe because we're talking about something logical. I mean, yeah, today I took about a lot of illogical things, but there's answers to all this. When you call somebody, that was one of the reasons why I did the reach out, so that people can have intelligent conversations with each other. And that you don't call somebody a neo thing and start talking about somebody else a neo thing. And what difference is that than being in that AC world all the time? If we start having more conversations about consciousness and neo-thinking and us taking our positive steps towards our own goals, that's a huge, huge move forward. When these conversations, when you're done hanging out with anybody that you talk to, whether it's somebody in neo-think or somebody in the AC world, and you just talk for 10, 20 minutes, and maybe it was a friend of yours or a relative or whatever, after you hang up, ask yourself this question. What value was there in that call today? I talked to Mary for 20 minutes today. Was there any value? Did I get anything valuable out of that conversation? Walk down the street, and there's people walking by you. Just listen to the conversations if they're talking with someone. Or even if they're talking on the phone, which a lot of people are too now. And you hear them complain about their work, or their bosses, or their family members, and it's usually gossip. It's usually not a very positive conversation. Where's the positive conversations at? And Frank R. Wallace describes it greatly in the first 2 paragraphs of Cassandra's Secret about how it's just insane, our conversations today, because there's no value in them at all. That's the bicameral mind working. So think about the next time you talk to somebody and see how much value is in that conversation. Probably not a lot. So when I'm talking to people on the phone, I have a lot of people to call, I have to cut them down. I have to really not be rude with them, but I have to say, I can't take time to hear their story. Because I don't have that time. I don't have that luxury, even though we all have a story. And I would love to hear some of these stories that people have, but I don't have the time. Because Nina thinks about time, too. So when you're on a phone and you're talking to somebody for an hour or so, and then you say to yourself, there was no value in that. Well, that's just an hour of your life that you wasted. And you could have been maybe reading the books or having a better conversation with someone else. Something that would give you value. So think about that the next time that you call and you talk to anybody. And neither think her out. I just looked at the time, and it's time to go. So I hope that helped tonight about the bicameral mind. Read about it. It's in all the books. It's a big hit. So